Hey, everybody, this is Bob Goodwin, President of Career Club, joined by my good friend, the President and CEO of SHRM, Johnny C. Taylor Jr. Johnny, how are you?
Man, I'm doing well. And you?
I'm doing well. I cannot wait to jump into another episode of The Work Wire with you. Thank you.
Let's go.
Awesome. So let's just get right into it. SHRM recently put out a statistic that indicated that 44% of workers are identifying as being burned out, recently at work. And, we talk a lot about bringing the whole person to work and stuff like that. And I want to unpack burned out and the business implications of that, and then how HR and as a function can help with that, what my responsibility and things I can do as an employee, as an individual can be doing with that. But I just want to set the table really, really quick, and then I'll hand the microphone over. We've got a presidential election coming up. People are freaked out about that. We've got a war in Israel that people are freaked out. We've got inflation. We've got layoffs. We've got potentially a recession. Just lots of things going on, kind of outside, right? But impact me directly. Then there's my real life. I've got my aging parent. I've got my potential kid who's going off the rails. I've got the health issue maybe I haven't told you about. Maybe my marriage isn't doing amazingly well right now. There's all kinds of stuff going on in my air quote real life. Right? Oh, there's the work that I do, and do I have enough resources? Do I have a great boss? Am I capable? There are so many things acting on people that are resulting in things like burnout, which is not just physical exhaustion, it's mental and emotional exhaustion. It starts to reflect itself in loss of productivity, healthcare costs, attrition, absenteeism. There's just tons of things that are impacting businesses and people that kind of fall under, I think, the general headline of burnout.
Yes.
And I'd like to explore that, and then maybe some things that individuals and companies might be able to think about to address it.
So this is a topic that I'm so glad you introduced in the way that you did. Too often. So, I mean, seriously, hats off to you, because what you did was you painted the entire picture. Too often, the discussion about burnout begins and ends at 9 o'clock and 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So they put all of the responsibility, the onus for burnout on the employer and the people manager, as if that is the sole cause of burnout. And I tell you why this resonated with me. I was walking to the garage one morning, and I walked into an employee and I said, "How are you doing?" And she burst into tears.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. And she said, "I'm exhausted. I'm just burned out." And so literally standing there in the garage, I probed why, because my natural thought was, is she working for someone who is working her 70 hours a week? Are they calling her on the weekend? Are they doing things? Are we responsible, in short, for her burnout? Just by listening, I learned her mother had been terminally ill. She'd been leaving work. Her boss was actually quite accommodating and letting her leave early to take mom to the doctor's appointments and come in a little late when she had, like, all of this. But the problem is she was working 20 hours a day between her familial responsibilities and her work responsibilities. And she had to do both. She had a moral obligation to take care of her mother who was transitioning. She also had a financial obligation to come to work every day and do high quality work. So I bring that up to say this is really complicated, and we need to be careful not to think that the solution is you've got to be a better people manager, or you've got to distribute the work more evenly. It's not that simple, because people are bringing everything with them to work. They could actually walk into your office in the morning already burned out.
Exactly. 100%.
Right.
I gave a talk last week to a local SHRM chapter on this topic, and was sort of making the case that I just did to introduce this. Afterwards, a lady who helps lead I&D at her workplace, and very familiar with the concept of bring your whole self to work. She's like, you completely redefined. I had not thought of it that holistically.
Right.
And yet, as human beings, by definition, there's the mind, soul, body, spirit kind, like it's all of those things, and we can't compartmentalize them very neatly at all. And all of it bleeds onto the other thing. And part of the case that I was trying to make is that for businesses, these aren't soft issues.
Nope.
Like, oh, I'm just being empathetic, right? And I'm just trying to be a good listener and whatever. It's like, no, like there are some extremely hard, you're already paying for this.
That's right.
You are already paying for this.
But Bob, the question then is, because of people do try to compartmentalize, people are not as forthcoming. So it's one thing to ask a business or an employer, an HR professional to help someone solve a problem, but you can't solve that you don't know. So in this case, the employee didn't tell any of us.
Right.
So all I know is that you show up to work and you're not your best self. You're not productive. You're not efficient. You're irritable because you didn't sleep last night. And so the person next to you, you snap at, that colleague doesn't know your story. But you want to hold the organization accountable for not being empathetic, not having a culture of inclusivity and like you also, again, you hear me say this a lot. There's plenty of blame and culpability when it comes to these things. It really is. And it's easy to drop this at HR or at the people manager at leadership's doorstep and say, you're responsible for having a burnout culture. My only point is that legitimately happens in some places. But we are seeing that it's far more complicated. I'll give you another one that we are seeing a lot. In fact, if you saw just recently, DC government, because of people's ability to work remote, either sometimes through hybrid or full-time, there are a lot of people working 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And so you complain about being burned out, and the answer is yeah, because you have chosen to take on 2 jobs in addition to all of your familiar responsibilities. And I say chosen because I know someone might be saying, well, but I had to pay my bills. Again, you chose. We all make decisions. We make our own choices. And so what happens when the person drove Uber starting at 4 o'clock, did a 4-hour shift from 4 to 8, and then came to work for me because they were trying to help put their kid through college? I get it. But is it fair for me as the employer to at 9 o'clock in the morning get you 5 hours into your day? Is it? And if I don't know that you're an Uber driver for those first 4 hours before you get to me, I have no way, even if I wanted to accommodate it, factor it in, et cetera, I can't. You can't practice what you don't know. And this is what I meant about the compartmentalization of it. If it's familiar responsibilities that last night you were with your mother or your kid, and this morning you drove Uber and then you showed up to me, all I know is the person who showed up and their performance. So that makes this really difficult. Don't you get what I'm saying? And so
I do.
It's really, we can't overly simplify this. The discussions that I hear around burnout do a lot of dropping this at the feet of the organization and essentially blaming.
Actually, I want to pick up on that, Johnny, because I want to flip it a little bit here. Rather than laying the blame at the feet of the company, HR, if you want to pick on them, is how the company, and I think specifically HR, can be part of the solution to help meet people where they are.
But you got to know where they are to meet them there.
I'm massively agreeing with that. Right. So one of our mutual friends, Kara Chenault-Reed, who's the CHRO at Koch Industries, who I've got a tremendous amount of respect for. We were talking earlier this week, and she was saying, people experience the company through their manager, which is true. And she is leaning very heavily into, like, you need to know your people. You need to be very intentional about knowing your people, so that when you see that, Johnny's showing up a little bleary eyed, his work's been late a couple of times, then that's not Johnny. Or Johnny got a little snippy about something. It's like, that's not the way Johnny usually handles himself. To take that empathetic, what's going on? You don't seem like yourself. Is there something, that is going on that I can help with? And giving that person the opportunity to kind of share. Now, the people have to choose to share.
That's the only point I want to double click on.
I know. The people have to choose to share. However, the really first class frontline people manager, and I think there's a training, and this is part of what Kara was saying, there's a training opportunity to help people become better people managers. Oftentimes we get to be a manager because we're really good at the technical, the proficiency part of my job, right? I'm great at this, so I'm going to put you in charge of something else. Versus, well, now that you've got people responsibilities, that may be a completely new skill set, probably is for you. Let us help you learn some of those skills. Again, not that we're absorbing that other person's burnout. That's not the people manager's job or even the HR person's job, but just to learn how to look for signs, learn how to engage, and give people at least the opportunity to share more what's going on, so that if we do need to be accommodating, do something that's more flexible. A lot of times there's company benefits that people either don't know about or aren't taking advantage of, or it may signal, hey, we need to bring another benefit in here, that because this seems to be a recurring need at the company. So I'm talking too much. I think you know where I'm headed.
No, and I do want to unpack that a little bit more. I'm gonna get really personal now, right? Oh, a moment that I in 2005, 6, my marriage started failing. Okay, probably was failing before, but I mean, I became acutely aware of it. And 4 years into my marriage, and I was really struggling. And I was general counsel of a huge 400,000 person company, board secretary, I mean, a big job. And I was in my early 30s. So, a career, story that people dreamed of, and I was making a lot of money and da 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 da. And I had my own burnout moment. I mean, literally, where I could not manage anymore. My organization, I had a great relationship with my boss, but culturally, and I'm bringing in, again, some being vulnerable, but you separate work and your personal lives. We were taught, and I can tell you, this is probably true of all communities, so I'm not making an assumption about all communities, but in my Southern Christian, African-American background, it was, your work life is your work life. There are things you talk about at work that you don't talk about, but you separate them. So I never, even though I had a great relationship with my boss, I consider him a friend, and never thought it appropriate, and I would not share with him what I was going through. Mm-hmm. There was nothing he could have done to get out of me what was going on in my life, until I literally hit a wall and messed up on something substantive at work. Now, I'm well educated. I didn't need a check. I wasn't like, oh my God, I have to be perfect, because if I don't get this next 2-week check, I'm in trouble. It wasn't any of that. But individuals, as you know, human beings are really complicated and complex at once. And I think I burned out, literally, to the point where I had to seek help. There was no reason. I didn't have a ton of children to feed, but we just do that. So when I think about burnout, it's not a theoretical topic to me. It's one that I had to live. I literally had to stop working and get myself together. But I never, ever would let the company know, because I thought that's my problem. So I hope what we're doing as a profession is doing all that we can, to your point, to build trust with our employees, to let them know we're there. But then you have to, as HR professionals, know that sometimes you're just not going to know. People are not going to tell you. I've had staffers who have gone through chemo, and so they determined learned they were diagnosed with cancer, went through all of it and didn't disclose to me until it was obvious, either loss of hair or they jump up in the middle of a meeting and go, regurgitate their lunch in a bathroom. I had no idea. And I am a pretty darn good people manager, if I must say so myself. I'm in tune to that because, again, what I've gone through in my career. So I'd love you to react to, what do you do? Because I think there's room for us to address burnout. You and I, on a past episode of the Workwire talked about, working people 70, 80, 90 hours a week consistently. Check, got that. And that can lead to some really bad outcomes, including people's loss of life. But what do you do if you assume that there's some people are pretty darn good as people managers? But you just can't get it out of your people.
Yeah. So that to me is the second domino. The first domino is being observant, being intentional, right? And knowing your people well enough to build trust. Right. For me, this is a little philosophical, but it's kind of the difference between a leader and a manager. A manager is good at managing tasks and work. And what does the spreadsheet say? And you're at 92% of what the spreadsheet says you need to be. So Johnny, there's an 8% gap. Go fill it. Okay, way to go. For me, a leader is somebody that can demonstrate that they care more about the person as a human being first than as a work producing unit. And when you can build that level of trust with somebody, that is everybody going to share? No, but you're at least creating the environment that's okay. And one of the things that I have learned from smart people like you and other really top shelf CHRO folks is modeling vulnerability. You just did it, right? And being able to share with people, look, again, you don't have to just like bare your entire soul and life, to somebody at work, but to say, you know what, I've these past 2 weeks have been pretty hard on me, and I'm going to take Friday off because I just need to decompress and I need an extra day. And if any of you guys are going through something like what I'm feeling right now, like let's talk about it. Let's figure out how you can get the rest that you need. But it's like, oh, Johnny's burned out. I thought Johnny was Superman. No, right. Johnny gets tired too. And Johnny's like, I'm going to go spend the day with my daughter, and I'm just going to, recharge and refresh. And you're just modeling the behavior. In my experience, when you can show people that you care about them truly, genuinely as a human being, to the extent they will let you, to your well-made point, and then also model, hey, I'm a human being over here too. Like, I got stuff going on, so I hear you. You've at least created the environment. And then the third thing I'll say, and I'll stop, is I think that socially, that from 2004 or 5 that you were talking about to now, it's shifted not a small amount, that it's okay to talk about I'm not doing great. It's okay to not be okay, basically is part of our lexicon now. That before it's like, to your point, nope, dude, what happens at home is what happens at home. This is work. Figure out how to separate the two. And that's where we see people burning out, is because that work-life balance implies stress, that you have opposing forces that you're trying to balance. So
I'd love to, and I don't have the answers. I don't know the research answer, but I do wonder how much things have changed from 2004 to 2024. I'd like to believe that they have, but the woman that I described in the garage, that happened in 2024. I know of an employee right now, a young kid who has been married 2-3 years, maybe 2 years. He's going through divorce. We found out, and then it was like, that explains the behavior of this employee. And this is someone who I think in both instances are beloved. They're great employees, well regarded. Before we got on this, and it was purely coincidental, I'm going to hold this up. I was watching this on my screen. Simon Sinek, actually 16 minutes ago, before we started this call, said the following, and I think this captured, it just popped up. Asking for help is an act of service. Don't deny the people who love you the honor of being there to support you. That is part of the solution. Is we have got to get that message out to our workplaces that, I don't know that I'd call it an obligation, because it's hard to put more obligation on people but asking for help is in fact an act of service. If we could build that as a profession into our sort of zeitgeist, and people believe that, we could move this forward. But it was coincidental that hit my screen just before you and I started talking. But so I say that, we have got to do a lot of work on, yes, the employer side, but we've got to do a lot on the employee side. Right? That's all I'm getting to.
No. So it's messaging and modeling.
Yes, that's well done. Messaging and modeling, and accountability on both sides.
Always. These are adult to adult relationships. This is not parent child.
Right.
And yeah. So, but back to, I wonder what the data would say. Like,
Yeah.
has it really? I think it'd be interesting to go look at actually SHRM communications over the years, because you guys do a very good job of messaging, empathy, civility, mental wellness, resilience, all these kinds of things, I associate with SHRM, right? Versus if we went 20 years ago, how much is it more legal compliance and that kind of stuff?
Yep. No, I think that's right. And so we're trying to fix for it. And I think most of our members overwhelmingly are HR professionals.
Yes.
So, but as you know, we're pivoting a little, remaining true to our core, but now talking workers and the workplace. And the worker message is just that. Like, you have to tell your boss, if you're in HR and you're under some insane amount of pressure outside of 9 to 5, that is creating burnout conditions for you.
I think this is highly related. If you think that it's not, but on the same slide that I see, the burnout statistic from SHRM is also an engagement statistic. And thank you, Dr. Alex, for all the data collection and analysis and insights for that. But engagement is also, because it's also a contributor to this, right? If I feel like my work doesn't matter, right? It's not that important. What we do isn't that important. Now I'm working for what? Like, just to make some guy on Wall Street richer, or like, what am I doing all this for?
I got to interject there?
Go.
What if you think your work is so important that you work too much? The opposite is true. The Wall Street guy, this deal is so big, it is so important. Young investment banker, matter because I'm going to help the organization land a $2 billion deal. So I'm willing to work 80, 90 hours a week. So
actually, I kind of probably didn't communicate that very well. I'm saying is, I go in, I do my hours. You guys pay me every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure why what I'm doing matters to me. I don't find it particularly fulfilling. I'm not sure how it helps the company or our customers. We're just making shareholders richer, but that's kind of, as near as I can tell, the net impact of my work. That lack of engagement, right, also contributes to a lack of innovation, a lack of creativity, a lack of fulfillment, right? And either that's going to lead to, we become a magnet for mediocrity, that people just sort of hang out here because they're allowed to, or attrition. It's like, I need to go someplace else where my work matters. But in our work, in coaching people, we definitely see that folks are like, I need to get involved in something that I find more fulfilling. This does not align with my values or my aspirations. And I think that, you can get burned out more easily when you think your work doesn't matter. You can dig deeper when you think your work does matter. That's
check. Don't disagree with that. Violently agree with it. And so I love the way we take these topics, because, I'm a lawyer, but I like I'm a puzzle guy. Like, I really try to figure things out. And the more complicated the puzzle, the more what can I call it? Engaged I become, because I like figuring out difficult things. This is difficult. This whole topic is difficult. And again, I harken back to your initial description of the situation, the state of the world. Your burnout, to the extent people are experiencing it, is there are multiple factors that are leading to it. It may manifest itself at work because that's where we spend most of our waking hours, right? Mm-hmm. So it may show up in that day somewhere between 8 and 6, but it's impacted by a whole bunch of things that we sometimes don't control, mostly don't control. If you're with me 8 hours a day, there's another 16 for life to happen to you, right? So disproportionately, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage, but we can't layer on to the problems. Now, how do you react to that? Maybe that's the biggest thing, is whatever is going on in your personal life, you should not come to work and then it be made worse and exacerbated by a bad people manager, by unreasonable expectations, by harassment from colleagues. That is the one thing we as an HR professional can do. Is that a way?
I totally agree with that. I'm actually going to be you for a minute, but at the same time, you can't bottle it all in, right? And so you have to. On the complicated thing, and I want to be respectful of time here, the way that I've tried to break this down in my own mind, and I think the model works, is body, soul, mind, and strength. And so, when we can get our values, like what I genuinely believe to be true, that's what impels me, that's what pushes me. Okay. But then there's the other part where I'm engaged, like what we do matters. That draws me, that woos me, if you will, right? And so I'm being pushed by what I want, but I'm also being drawn by what we do matters.
Yes,
right. Those are energizing things, right, that allow me to feel less stress and maybe more fulfillment.
Yes.
But at the same time, I need to be taking care of my body. Like, I got to sleep. I made you laugh a couple of weeks ago. Sleep is the most important meal of the day. But, I need to get enough sleep. I need to eat right. I need to eat regularly, right? I need to not be abusing my body with alcohol or whatever else, in indulgence kinds of ways. I need to take breaks. We talked about that earlier, right? And I need to give my mind a little bit of time to just meditate, ruminate, just separate a little bit. And so when I think that we can think about, the complexity of the human and then start to break it down into how I think about things, what I believe is true for me, what I need for my organization, and then more broadly, my calling, my purpose, right? And then taking care of my body. That to me starts to at least break it down into more corner pieces of a puzzle,
right?
That the rest of it starts to fill in around.
Do that acronym for me. BS, it doesn't sound right. BSMS, body, soul. What's the
mind, and strength.
Right. Okay. BSMS. That's really going to our degrees. Let's call it degrees.
Yeah. So part of the thing on mind is two things. You're very, very good about talking about upskilling. So keep me mentally challenged, right? And keep this interesting. I'm curious. I want to keep learning. The world's changing from under me. And how do I continue to have learning growth opportunities? But there's also the part of the mind of when a problem comes, when an unexpected change comes, how do I frame that out in my mind? How do I learn how to kind of reprogram that this isn't a threat as much as it might be an opportunity? And how do we get creative and communal in solving this thing instead of being overwhelmed by it? So the mind is there's somewhere that's very core to this whole thing, is how we think about these things.
I love creative and communal. You are so good at you're the man. You can say anything and it sounds good.
I learn from the best. But in all seriousness, it's when we can see people that holistically and be able to start to break it down into actionable, definable, measurable components, then we've got a really good chance of making a positive difference. Last thing I'll say, and I'm quoting you, the culture that somebody finds themselves at with work isn't necessarily good or bad.
Right.
Back to investment banker, you can go choose that. Like,
Yep.
I love that. I want to work my tail off. I want the prestige. I want the credentials. I want the money. Like, okay, that's not a bad culture. For a lot of people, that's not a good culture for them. So, it made just back to autonomy and agency. You always have choices. You always have choices.
Yep. No,
And I think when people can come to that understanding that they're not victims,
that's right.
that is highly liberating, and letting people see that they have choices that they can go act on is a very, very liberating epiphany for a lot of folks.
Yep. And great for HR, by the way. HR, the profession, and HR, the people. No, hands down. I really, really have enjoyed this topic. I didn't know where we were going to fully go.
Me either.
It was really cool. Like I said, I can't thank you enough for setting it up to understand a lot of these discussions. And to anyone who's listening today, a lot of these discussions immediately go to what the employer is doing wrong, or what
Yeah,
the
that's
role has been in burnout. And I think we have to be thoughtful about how we think about this issue, because it's confronting us, it affects us, and it's not good for business. It's not good for our people.
well, and by the way, not only is it not going away, but the pace of change and the magnitude of change are only increasing. And it behooves us as business people and human beings to get a handle on this and deal with it, in an effective and empathetic way.
That's right.
Amen. Awesome.
Amen.
All right, Johnny, anything else? I thought that was very good.
Someone told me the other day, it's unrelated, but they said yesterday was the slowest day of your life. And it's really, I think you may have said that, but it's this idea that life is just, it's getting faster and faster and faster and more complicated. And so these are important topics for HR professionals and people managers
and workers.
And workers to brood on. Yep.
Awesome. Johnny, thank you so much. Always fun being with you here on the Work Wire. Come on. And to our listening and viewing audience, thank you guys so much. If there's a topic that you would love to see us tackle, send it to me, bob@career.club. We'd love to take it on. But mostly, I just want to say thank you for investing a few minutes. If you're listening to this on your podcast platform, please just leave us a quick review. That always helps. But mostly, I just want to say thank you very much. Johnny, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, sir.
Take care, my friend.
All right.